It's June 16th, 2023, and Gajendra Prabhu will lead class from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 19.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Night touch,
Night touch,
Chitram,
Chitram,
Twayi,
Twayi,
Kshatar,
Shatar,
Vadanayana.
Adaraya,
Viryaje,
Viryaje,
Grihito,
Grihito,
Ananya,
Ananya,
Bhavena,
Bhavena,
Yat,
Yat,
Tvaya,
Tvaya,
Harir,
Harir,
Ishwaraha.
Ishvara.
I touched Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
I touch Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
Vadarayana Viryaje,
Adarayana Viryaje,
Grihito Ananya Bhavena,
Vito Nanya Bhavena,
Yatvaya Harir Ishwaraha.
Yatvaya Harir Ishvara.
I touched Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
I touch Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
Vadarayana Viryaje,
Adarayana Viryaje,
Grihito Nanya Bhavena,
Vito Nanya Bhavena,
Natvaya Hari Ishvara.
Yatvaya Harir Ishvara.
Anybody?
I touch Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
Touch Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
Vadarayana Viryaje,
Vadarayana Viryaje,
Vito Nanya Bhavena,
Grihito Ananya Bhavena,
Yatvaya Harir Ishvara.
Natvaya Hari Ishvara.
Online, would someone like to chant the verse?
Naitat chitram tvayi kshatar,
I touch Chitram Twayi Kshatar,
Vadarayana viryaje,
Vadarayana Viryaje,
Grihito nanya bhavena,
Vito Nanya Bhavena,
Yatvaya harir ishvara.
Yatvaya Harir Ishvara.
Anybody else? We'll do the word for word translation. Na, never.
No, never.
Etat, such inquiries.
Ekat, such inquiries.
Chitram, very wonderful.
Chitram, very wonderful.
Twayi, in you.
Twayi, in you.
Shata, O Vidura,
Shata Ovidura,
Badarayana of Vyasadeva,
Badarayana of Vyasadeva,
Viryaje,
Viryaje,
born from the semen,
born from the seed,
Grihita,
Grihita,
accepted,
accepted,
Ananya Bhavena,
Ananya Bhavena,
without deviation from the thought,
without deviation from the thought,
Yat, because.
because.
We can do it that way. Tvaya, by you.
Tvaya, by you.
Hari, the personality of Godhead.
Hari, the personality of Godhead.
Ishvara, the Lord.
Ishvara, the Lord.
Translation, Srila Prabhupada, followed by the purport. O Vidura, is it not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought? For you were born for the semen of Vyasadeva. Purport. The value of great parentage and noble birth is evaluated here in connection with the birth of Vidura. The culture of a human being begins when the father invests the semen in the womb of the mother. According to his status of work, a living entity is placed in a particular father's semen because Vidura was not an ordinary living entity. He was given the chance to be born from the semen of Vyas. The birth of a human being is a great science, and therefore reformation of the act of impregnation, according to the Vedic ritual called Garbha Dana Samskara, is very important for generating good population. The problem is not to check the growth of the population, but to generate good population on the level of Vidura. Vyas and Maitreya, there is no need to check the growth of population if the children are born as human beings with all precautions regarding their birth. So-called birth is not only vicious, but also useless.
So-called birth control.
So-called birth control is not only vicious, but also useless. Om Gyam Tamarandasya Nanjana Shalakaja Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Welcome everybody. Govinda Prabhu for hosting. Christy Clark, Nandini Devi Dasi, Anasuya Deva Dasi, and Bhaktin Kim. This, I'm begging your forgiveness up front. There's no preparation. This is a spontaneous acceptance on my part to give class. But I'm really feeling fortunate and appreciative to not only for the opportunity to speak, but just to hear from Srila Prabhupada, from this extraordinary literary work of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this, I find this verse so extremely relevant in the present. Bhagavatam comes from so many thousands of years ago. Thousands and thousands of years ago. And it has so much relevance throughout all that time. But I'm finding so much relevance to what's happening in the modern world right now. So the subject here is very much about what the Bhagavad Gita would also refer to. Arjuna had expressed his concern about unwanted progeny. And so much is happening in the world right now. And of course, there's the natural world that's existing. There's laws of nature. There's many plants and animals that are following, excuse me, that are following the natural order of things that's been ordained by the Ishwara, the part of Ishwara, ultimately. And so nature is going on. The plants and the animals that come into being and grow throughout their changes, have their life, have their function as a part of the whole ecosystem and functioning of the Earth planet. They are following. They're having their experiences on a fairly naturally instinctual level. And so there is this difference in humans. Sorry, this is really having something happening. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So there is a difference then, not in terms of the ultimate identity that of being spirit or Jivatma as part of the parcel of Krishna, nor in having a dharma, both spiritually and as one's natural duties in the world. But the human beings, there is a difference. There is a type of intelligence, a level of self-awareness where there can be questions that are asked. There can be a higher level of discernment and asking questions and making choices in life. And so as human beings, we have greater powers in those areas. And with that, as is often said, I think it's with great power comes great responsibility, or I'm borrowing close enough. Yeah. And so this very important verse from the very important Srimad Bhagavatam, again, is addressing this subject, which is seemingly timeless for the human beings of this world. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the world right now. So in looking at the relevance of Bhagavatam and of having spiritual knowledge, Srila Prabhupada would go very deeply into many matters, and part of what he addressed was things that were happening in the world, socially and politically, things with society. He wasn't just always, talking about flowers or Krishna's lotus feet, but he saw that there is a trouble in this world with ignorance, people being very, without knowledge, being very affected and lost in the modes of material nature, of which, for many people, tamagun ignorance and rajagun passion are dominating very, very much. And so their choices and behaviors are coming from that and being very entangled, not only for themselves, but making disturbance, making problems in the world. And we are at an interesting time, and the material world always has its problems. Yet there is history, there is cycles for different people in different places. But I think it's fair to say, I know many people will argue with me because people always like to make me wrong, but I do happen to know that there's many people that agree that this is a little bit of an extraordinary time on the planet where we have, social and political dynamics that had been sort of more peaceful and simmered down, things within society, relationships, not for everybody, but generally speaking, we come into a time where there's a lot of discord. We're experiencing, if we were to chart Kali Yuga, maybe it's a little bit of a peak. Kali Yuga's kind of been expressing on a kind of bullish pattern. So we have a lot of division and not a lot of good communication. And there's a lot of what's happening does very much connect to having a materialistic lifestyle. And we've come into a time where, while there are, of course, there are many people on the planet that are pursuing spiritual life, that are, many traditions and cultures and areas that are in the mode of goodness. And actually, they get it. They're trying to learn to love God. But we are living at a time where a lot of the so-called leadership politically, they don't take advice from pure Brahmins. Instead, they are kind of the same people, the capitalists that are running amok, literally controlling government. It's kind of called the revolving door. And they are promoting ideologies and setting policies and creating systems that cause people or do not really well facilitate people. We don't really have much of an ashram society. We have a society that is largely based on trying to find the elusive material happiness. And it often comes down to exploitation and ultimately making. So we have a society where the economic system is not in harmony with nature. It's very much based on somewhat, man-made systems based on not anything that might be lofty like Daivi Varnashram, but the whole appeal is about material, your material body, your possessions, what you get to own, who you can control. Even the concepts such as freedom are not really based on liberation of the soul, but the concepts are freedom to just do whatever you want, not to serve God, but just do whatever you want, to feel liberated, to be as gross as you want, to feel liberated, to be lustful and greedy. It's a very strange sense.
Freedom as synonymous with being a slave to the senses and mind.
Certainly. They're missed on what freedom is, what real freedom is about. Yeah, they're literally, it's a little bit, Orwellian or Huxley. It's like, and nowadays, like, freedom is slavery, it's very strange. So ideally there was a culture, a Vedic culture, even a biblical culture, and Prabhupada, talks in the purport here, because there's a lot of ideas that have come up about things like population control. Okay, so where is that coming from? Like, we have what Prabhupada's saying here, and I'm not a Bible scholar, but I know there's kind of be fruitful and multiply, and I think they have a strange interpretation of the word dominion, but humans are meant to accept this responsibility of stewardship and care for all the earth and its animals. But here we have a system where it's really self-sabotaging. You have a lot of people that are, can go and study and get university degrees and go deeply into certain aspects of the material energy and analyzing, but even in that way, a lot of it's just a bunch of zeros of information. It's a bunch of zeros of information because they don't have a clear idea what it's all about from the onset. They don't understand that the only way to really find a perfect world, the only way to really make a better world, is to align oneself with the service of the Supreme Lord to the best one is able to conceive of God. And so when we try to, as is sometimes said, have the kingdom of God without God, we are just sort of manipulating the bubbles of problems sometimes, like, okay, well, here's a big problem, and we'll try to resolve it and push it down, and we'll do this, but maybe we'll just create more bubbles over here. So it's, Prabhu likes to give the example of how as people move forward, like, oh, we're going to have these city streets, we're going to have these paved roads now for the horses and the carriage, and they just kind of stunk it up with road apples or stone, and oh, well, now we've got the answer. We're going to have the automobile. And, oh, well, how well did that work out? A lot of wars have been fought over petroleum, and there's raging right now between the sources of climate change, and it just gets never ending. There'll be a lot of experts and talking heads that have these very impressive degrees and insights, and they're yelling at each other almost. I mean, some of them are actually very respectable and civil, but a lot of them are just sold out to who's going to pay them more to say what environmental group or the oil and gas company.
So-called Brahmin sold out to the military industrial complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is going on, and so again, bringing it back to this, there is a very unnatural world that's taking place, and this does, I'll bring up again, it connects to the modes of material nature. So there is we are to some degree or another, we are going to be affected by our environment, the world around us. And it's going to have a profound effect if we're worried about paying this bill or maintaining our phone contract or this or that. So many things to worry about. Where will the food come from? Oh my gosh, COVID came up, things disappeared off the store shelves. So there'll always be problems like that. And in transcendence, this is the world we live in. If that's what we're dealing with, that's totally fine, as long as we're surrendering to Krishna, because that's the only thing that really matters. But also on a practical level, Srila Prabhupada talked about the mode of goodness. He talked about simple living, high thinking. He talked about harmony, living in harmony with nature. And in that type of environment, when we are aligned with God and we are aligned with the natural ways rather than the artificial ways, things will flow properly. Just like every system, whether it's a machine or whatever, it matters to the functioning. Like, oh, wow, like I put sugar in my body and I feel more energy. I'm going to put sugar in the gas tank in my car. That should work. I'm very smart, sugar energy. So this doesn't, oh, well, that didn't work. So, there's actually information that we receive that, and again, we don't want to be, turn this into something material, like being conditioned by the material modes of nature. I mean, by the mode of goodness, but there is what's laid out as far as a progressive path and a healthy lifestyle, where if people are living properly on the planet, actually performing ceremonies, being in Krishna consciousness, people who are purified have a much better chance, at least, of having children that will come to them, because that's what that child's, and again, there's always details of exception. Somebody on the path maybe need to have a really difficult child for someone karmic release or working through letting go of something. But generally speaking, by following the ways of good household life for procreating children and having a lifestyle where children are not a burden, but actually a blessing and an asset, that actually works best in a society that is aligned with God and naturally based. So now what is being faced is, so conflict. So we have, for a long time in society, there's been an issue that never quite went away, and it's bubbled up, of course, again with everything else, and that's like abortion. And while there is there's always been things that have taken place. People have eaten meat. People have killed animals and eaten meat, and they may have, who knows, maybe even with mantras or herbs, there may have been times that a pregnancy was being terminated. But what was not happening was mechanized animal slaughter that's reached the point of billions of animals. Actually billions and billions a year. Or factory abortions where fetuses and parts of fetuses, stem cells, whatever they're going after, is actually business. There's actually a business of abortion, factory abortion. It's pretty amazing. So wow, how far away is what's happening? Not isolated, like, oh my gosh, we're aghast. Like there's, you know, a few 100 million people in this country, and you know, there's 1 or 2 incidences a year of an abortion or some atrocious thing, but like millions. And the reason for it is often based on there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons. But it comes back again to that false sense of freedom, a false sense of proprietorship, of even over it's a really unnatural thing. And so, you know, where people go with that. So I'm going to pause for just a moment. I want to look back at the birth work. So Prabhupada says, he talks about Vidura being an extraordinary living entity, and therefore the chance to be born as the son of Vyas. And I'll just make a quick mention, you know, this is extraordinarily exalted. But even on another level that's really good, the Bhagavad Gita talks about someone who is pious, who's been on the spiritual path, or who is somehow showing a desire to pursue spiritual life, will also take birth, maybe not as a child of Vyas, but in a family with parentage that are people that are spiritual or religious, really doing well. I think parents who are Gaudiya Vaishnavas be pretty not special. Or even in a family where there's maybe some affluence to have some luxury of time and education, that when properly used, one can devote time to answering those questions as opposed to being wasting a lot of time in the pursuit of material acquisition or stature, because they already have it. In the sense that they're beyond it, because they have it, they're beyond the pursuit of it. So they have that time, and they have that freedom to choose well. They have that freedom to choose well. So I really don't feel I don't see how there really is any other way. I mean, that's what I'm looking at right now. Like as individuals and as society, and I think it is also really important as part of this discussion to not have any victim consciousness about society. Anyone who's here present right now with my attempt to give a class, you made you're so fortunate. You have a huge contact with the pure knowledge being delivered by someone who's a pure devotee with no motivation other than to serve your soul and the Supreme Soul and all the great enlightened masters who have been before. And we get to know transcendence. And it doesn't matter if this world is totally hellish. It doesn't matter what kind of environmental destruction is, or political turmoil, or what's happening on the streets. We are able to be. Just looking at the chat here. Nice. Please continue. We are able to make the choice as an individual. If nobody else in the world, and of course, fortunately, we have good Sangha, but if nobody else in the world understood or agreed, like on a very deep level personally, we have to go to that place where we transcend the material world, where we transcend all the problems that are manifesting in society right now. We have to transcend our own sense of having an economic problem, because we understand Krishna is taking care of us. We have to understand that we need to live. We need to understand that everything that's happening is under the control of the Supreme Lord, the Parameshwar. Everything is serving a purpose. So we need to have a completely transcendental vision and not succumb to the problem, to the distracting problems, to the fears that could be associated with those problems. We need to go very deeply. And then when we go to that place, if we're feeling Krishna conscious, if we're feeling aligned with our service to Sri Guru and Gauranga, then we can be so enlivened and so useful, even in this very difficult situation. We get the opportunity to help, to serve, to very humbly try to, our hearts, our consciousness has been lit, and we get to help serve, light Sri Guru Gauranga, help light others. And that's really the beauty of what's happening here. So it's really important that we go very deep to our own transcendental experience and see the opportunity that we get to play a service role and not feel victimized by it. And so it's very important to accept the world as it is, but it's even more important to, from there, be able to serve without any attachment to results, but just to really serve energetically as an awakening force, as a reminder. And we have that ability. We're part and parcel of Krishna. We might be minute, but when through the power of the parampara, we are connected. Miracles happen all the time. Almost all of us are devotees because of some miracle at some level. And so it's really it's really it's really important the children are really, really important. So not all children are being born for their children. They're somehow or other, they're not completing the birth process. And then there are children that are born And so many young people are growing up at a time that's very, very confusing. And I'm personally not going to take, I'm very aware of a lot of the social, political, and cultural issues. I personally cannot take a side in the conflict. But people need the shelter of spiritual knowledge, and people also need shelter of physical environment that includes sangha and opportunities for lifestyle, to have experience of peace, to have experience of knowledge, to have experience of real love that's unmotivated, that's not trying to control them materially or exploit them materially or join something divisive or to confuse children about things that should be really so basic just to start to function and grow. So the young people now are really, they're really facing a lot. And I'll just say it's a little interesting. I know my parents' generation was the generation that fought in World War II, and they faced a very global issue that they dealt with and came out very strong. So there was growth and opportunity with facing that. And what we're also facing now is on a very much a global level. And just because we have internet and media, that doesn't really solve anything. It's really stirring things up. But at the same level of time, it really connects us globally. And if we can redirect the conversation, infuse the conversation with spiritual understanding, not participate in the conflict, but try to get transcendent, above center to it, then, we have to. I mean, somehow we need to think, even if we're so humble that we realize we're worthless and, just fools and rascals, we have to realize that somehow or other, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we can play a role, even with all of our faults, in helping people as individuals, and with enough good luck. It was Prabhupada's goal to sort of he was a spiritual revolutionary. I mean, his goal is, like, let's transform the world. We're not here to destroy it. We're here to help reconstruct it in a way that can deeply, deeply, deeply help people find a happiness, a wellness like they never experienced before. Redefine who they are, what the world is about. Thank you for listening. Sorry at the beginning, it was a little hard for me to read because these are not my good glasses. I'm going a little blind. Thank you for listening. And if there's anything anybody would like to say, I'd really like to hear.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving class spontaneous. And I really appreciated everything you shared. And yeah, like a few things. You started with appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. And as you were speaking, I was just noticing that like 10, 20 years ago, when I would hear devotees speak about Srila Prabhupada and Krishna and all the acharyas with such appreciation, I thought, like, what are they going on about? Okay, they are special, but what like, yeah. And now I can relate so much. Like every day I feel such, and it feels like every day it's increasing the appreciation and like more insight into how exalted Srila Prabhupada is, how exalted Vidura, Maitreya, and it feels like eternally I can connect with more appreciation every day, like it can increase every day. So I appreciated that. And also what you spoke about climate warming and slaughter and abortion, and yeah, you know, like you brought it down to it all comes from a full sense of freedom and proprietorship. And yeah, I just find it really hard to be in this world and to be active in society. And like I'm working at the school now, so I'm really like with, yeah, that's the children, families. I see what's happening, and I find it really challenging to be in this, you know, like act in this society and be in a mood of service, and to be aware, okay, I approach things differently than most others, like when I look at the school where I work, for example, and to be like really clear in myself and not feel, you know, not feel like the victim. Srila Prabhupada says we are victimized by material nature all the time. And I feel like I'm experiencing that more and more, and to have that experience and not go into victim consciousness, it's, for me it's like a daily endeavor, a daily, like it's not automatic. It's like daily remembering, okay, this world is created for me to wake up, and every challenge is an opportunity to surrender more deeply and with more urgency. It's, yeah, it's like it's a daily, and sometimes many, I mean, hourly endeavor to be in that consciousness. And yeah, this morning I had a friend who came and she helped me in the garden, and we started with singing kirtan, and then we were working in the garden and speaking about the Ratha Yatra that is coming up, and Lord Jagannath, and it was such I I could, I don't know, it felt almost overwhelming, the gratitude I felt for this association, to be with another devotee and to be able to speak about you know, life and the challenges and Lord Jagannath. And I thought it's so special and so rare, and it feels like oxygen. No, I felt being in her association and sharing was like, oh, I can breathe again. Yeah. So this need for association and spiritual shelter, that's also something that's, yeah, it feels more and more like a desperate need to be in this association more and more, and not just, you know, like, oh yeah, they're devotees and we live in the same place, but to actually support each other and serve together. So yeah, so that's what was happening for me hearing you.
Yeah, that's really nice. I appreciate your appreciation of how you've grown to appreciate over the many years the appreciation that others have had and that you have for Srila Prabhupada and the many other saints in our line. And I also, yeah, and also I do, you said some things that were really important that I felt were important that I happened to bring up in class that came through, and about the victim, about not succumbing to victim consciousness. I'm really glad you mentioned that. I also like that you sort of were talking about communicating with the other devotee and having sangha, and you termed it as like oxygen. And I really appreciated that, because like, my gosh, oxygen. It's the highest sense of oxygen therapy that you're doing. And yeah, what is it like breathing air without oxygen? That's sometimes the experience of the material world. We're literally gasping to feel well, to experience the Satchitananda qualities of our being. And so I amused because I'm fortunate enough to have a bit of appreciation for Rupa Goswami and his instructions that he made simple and basic, because I can't understand things well, but he did that. I was just thinking, yeah, that process of reciprocating, sharing your mind with another devotee, whether it's about high realizations of Krishna's pastimes, or even what were the challenges that we may be experiencing in the world. But yeah, I really like that you referred to it as, finding oxygen. So powerful. So thank you for your expressing your comments.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing. And I have one more comment. You were speaking about confusion. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
You do. Okay. Yeah, about confusion, how much confusion there is in the world. And just yesterday we went on a school trip with the kindergarten kids, so 20 kids, 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, and they all had, we went into the forest and there was a fire, and 20 kids, they all had sausages for lunch. And it was such a shock for me somehow. I mean, when I was that age, I would also eat that for lunch. And now it's just this kind of, like, I was very clear. Like, some kids said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "No, I don't want to touch this. I don't know." And for them, it was confusing to hear that someone doesn't like meat. And in fact, it's just, it doesn't make sense to eat meat. There's really no reason. And just there's confusion about what is confusion. It seems like, yeah. I was thinking, what is the solution? There's confusion about confusion about confusion. It's layers and layers and layers. Yeah. Hare Krishna. I'm done.
Yeah, I'd like to make a super quick comment in favor of natural living, in favor of having intimacy with the earth. Because in modern times, because of the nature of agriculture, where hardly anybody is actually connected to the land where their food is being grown, fewer and fewer people worldwide, and in the Western countries, actually very few people have a relationship with land where they're growing their own food, even to eat healthily, much less as an offering to Krishna. And so it's like, yeah, sometimes that argument comes up, even like somebody's like, "Well, I'm vegan. But the majority of the food they're eating, there is still so much destruction, even if they're not eating meat or drinking milk. The level of living entities being killed to grow food with these machines that's still happening. How many, when land gets plowed and turned, like thousands of, not talking about just even like ants, but like field mice. I mean, it's just massive destruction because people don't have this simple living high thinking. They're not connected. They're not moving slowly, seeing the soil. Oh, there goes them. You know, they're just these big impersonal machines that destroy. So not directly related, but I just wanted to mention that in favor of natural living, simple living, high thinking. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah,
Hare Krishna, and thank you. I'm enjoying the conversation between you and Anandini. And Anandini, did you want to say more? You look like you were wanting to say more. No? Okay. I just was also appreciating Gajendra Prabhu, that your appreciation of Prabhupada, because that was probably the last 3 years that I really had an appreciation for his divine grace. I was really more in love with Krishna and the stories and the gopis, and not interested in building a relationship with Prabhupada. And so it was, I don't know where the resistance was, but once I surrendered to it, then like the love was just so amazing for Prabhupada. Like I really got it. It finally sunk in that this is such a blessing to have this wisdom and authority directly through Prabhupada. And I was so thankful for the past 9 years of it being a gradual process, so that it was more natural to come to Krishna consciousness and to really experience it with all my hesitations and resistance, and then just come from it joyfully. And so it made for such a nice reunion with all the relatives. I was just been in the Midwest for the last 2 weeks, just flew back in yesterday. And people were curious. Like, I didn't even have to bring up Krishna consciousness. And all my aunts and uncles before I came wanted to know, like, what can they prepare for me for meals? Like, what can the family enjoy with me? And so we had conversations about what it looked like. And I said, it's more of loving devotional preparation of food for Krishna, and not necessarily about, what I want. And it was a nice exchange of yeah, like preparing meals together. It was really nice to prepare meals together and for everyone to enjoy prasadam. And then people were naturally curious, like, what is it that you're saying in these prayers? And what is, so I get to talk about the personalities of God, right? So it was seamless. It was like I didn't even have to ask. I didn't even have to. Yeah, it was just so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was like so much conversation about how to relieve anxiety and misery that everyone was experiencing in their lives. Like everyone has a painful journey, and so many of my cousins are doing meditation to help relieve anxiety. And so it was nice to say, well, this is what I do. And then when they heard, that there was 108 beads and that I do 16 rounds of it at least, and most days before I begin my day, that they're completed, and they're like in awe, and they're just like really appreciating everything. And I just found it like it was just a natural way of having a conversation, and people were just so like warm and loving. Like they would share their experience with what it is with their relationship with God, and And so it was, I found more bhakti in my relatives' lives than I ever imagined was going on in their lives. So I hadn't been with them, some for 40 years. I haven't seen them in 40 years. So it was just so amazing to see different, people in my lives that just, we've been corresponding, or talking over the phone, but not being in person. And then, so they were just naturally curious, like, what have you been doing in your life and what's happening for you? So it was just having an appreciation for Prabhupada and giving me, like, it's just joy now. And people see it and people experience it and they want to taste it. So it's just been a beautiful experience. So I just wanted to share because I was so happy that it went so well, and that like I feel like our relationships have gotten stronger and closer. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I feel it, and I can understand that, and it's like there was no duality in your family relationship, like they're your family in every respect, and it's almost like you didn't even have to constrain yourself or have some artificial withhold about your spirituality, but you were just really being appreciated. And I mean, you as a spiritual being were being appreciated. I imagine, very touching and enlivening and wonderful, and just, all glorious to Prabhupada. And it's wow, what a beautiful family experience.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Anybody else like to, or anybody at all?
Hi, Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kali.
All right. I'm appreciating the conversation as well, everything that Anandini shared and Anasuya, and especially about this sort of learning to, or connecting with how special the devotees are, the disciplic succession and Prabhupada. And I was recently at, I haven't, it was very difficult in the beginning for me to have any connection with Prabhupada. I was probably somewhat turned off by his random presence, it seemed to me, and why not go straight to Krishna? And that is changing. That's changed a lot. I've had a lot of connection with him that I'm deeply grateful for, and for grateful to him for helping me open my heart to him. Or maybe it's Krishna or both. And I was at Sadhu Sangha recently, and there were all of these gurus on stage, very highly regarded, and I don't know all the terms for it, but these gurus, and I knew in my mind, like, wow, this is a really big deal. And I was standing pretty close to the stage, so I made eye contact with a lot of them, and while in my mind I was like, yeah, I get it, this is a big deal, I didn't feel it yet. And so it's just another example of like how I'm not quite that progressed in my process. So I'm also appreciating Anasunya's appreciation for the gradual process, opening the heart to such a, for me, seemingly different approach to God. And yeah, it's nice to hear their process around that. And I appreciate your class. I was late joining, so I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but it's really nice to hear how you're relating to such current stuff. And it was helpful for me I had conversations recently about meat eating, and abortion has come up, and someone said, why do bad things happen to good people? So I got to address that a little bit too. So it's nice to hear it from devotees too. So lots of appreciation this morning. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you too. And I think thank you for all your full sharing. And you make a really important point relating to what Anishi and Nandini had said. You brought it even further for me. It is a gradual process. You use the word gradual. It is a step-by-step journey. And I personally think it's nice, like if if Kelly came on the scene and day one, she's like, I'm a great Prabhupada Nuga. Yeah. I'd almost like, interesting. But for me, it's like you're being, real with your experience, but obviously you were open, you were willing to look at what was coming at you, but also, it's a relationship. It's like, we all may we all may share having feeling for Srila Prabhupada, and many of us for a lot of the same reasons and understandings. And yet it's also very, very individual. We each have our unique relationship with Srila Prabhupada, what the level of intimacy is, what the personal interaction and pastimes that Prabhupada has in our lives. And we can hear about those from each other and appreciate each other's journeys. But ultimately, Prabhupada is a person. He's not some object that we get to, claim or possess, but he's an actual person that we develop a relationship with, and he reveals more of himself. We also find and reveal more of ourselves, and it's something that is forever discovered. Again, and like in a similar way, it's not really a destination. It's right, like I'm working, finally I've completed my relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Got there, been there, done that. It's not like that. It is to have the idea that it is an eternal relationship. We have an eternal relationship with Prabhupada and Krishna, and even hopefully with each other. And I mention this occasionally. There's one thing I want to say, like there's the Pancha Tattva Maha Mantra, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. And in my ignorance, I never really thought about the mantra for probably decades, other than, I'm supposed to say this before I chant my rounds, or I know who those personalities are to some degree, a little bit of information unrealized. But I started really wondering, what is this Gaura Bhakta Vrinda? Like you've got the personalities beginning with Sri Chaitanya, but why is Gaura Bhakta Vrinda being thrown in there? And upon a little study, what I realize is it's all of us. We are Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. And the idea is, Vrinda Devi is so important, but when a garland that is made for offering to the Lord is of the manjaris, the Tulsi manjaris. That's it. Like in Kirtan with Sri Chaitanya, all the devotees, the Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, they themselves, their beings, they consisted of the garland around Sri Chaitanya. He's dancing, he's leaping, the chanting. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda is the garland of the souls upon Sri Chaitanya. And we are that, each one of us. and, you know, we don't want to become self-centered, but to really appreciate who others are in the Sangha and what it means when we come together. When we come together in a circle and hold hands in service, so to speak, as an offering, What we offer as individuals, but also what we offer together.
Thank you. It's really beautiful. I appreciate the building relationship, the reminder that it is a relationship. It grows and it changes, and there's good days and bad days, and sometimes I want to be around them and sometimes I don't. And so it helps me be more gentle with my process around that, to be reminded that it's a relationship that is eternal, that we are always building and working on and looking at and understanding and pulling the weeds with, and all the things that we do with each other, hope to do with each other. I'm enjoying this vision of the garland that as we all come together for kirtan and chant and praise the Lord, because I can't think of the devotee way of saying it. For me, I'm visualizing like that we're either holding Krishna or holding space for Krishna, or like we're all creating this sort of place for him to be with us.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of when I was at Sadhu Sangha. I've been working on my mantra, she who must be held. And I imagined Krishna above all 3,000 of us, holding us all in his arms, and like his face, and like a face for everyone there to look at each person. And so it's like the reverse of that, like we can offer that too in this example you've given of the garland and the Gora Bhakti Vrinda. And it seems very loving. It gives a really loving feeling for me around it. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thank you. The Malini just joined the room. I don't know what time it is. Is there any final comment or share? If not, I wish everybody a wonderful day in Krishna consciousness. Why not? All glories to Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you, Gajendra. Wonderful class. Item discussion. Very interesting.
You give class
Yeah.
spontaneously.
He was.
Yeah, Diriga Vinodin asked a few questions that I had to give class, and I was very afraid.
It wasn't a good threat.
Because I asked Gajendra to give class a few Friday ago and he said no.
You gave me time to think about it.
Yeah,
He surprised me.
To prepare, to think about
I wasn't able to prepare my note adequately.
it.
Beautiful.
Nice, I'm sure it's you have all the knowledge inside you.
It was very natural. I appreciate so much your willingness and your presence in your class. Thank you, Gajendra.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.